Welcome to Burn On, Not Out, the podcast for founders and CEOs who are done being the bottleneck. I'm Brooke Dukes, and each week we expose the structural patterns that slow execution, overload founders, and keep decisions routing back to the top. And we install clear decision rules, defined ownership, and operating discipline that scales. Let's get into it. Let me tell you what's actually happening every time a decision reaches you. Not what you think's happening, what's actually happening. When someone on your team brings you a decision, a question, approval request, what do you think about this? They're not being inefficient. They don't even lack confidence. And they're not failing to lead. They're doing exactly what your company's structure has trained them to do. Because here's the truth. Every decision that reaches your desk is a vote of confidence in a system that you built. A system that says, when in doubt, route it up. A system that says the safest move is to ask before you act. A system that says the final decision lives at the top. And that system, the one you built, is now the ceiling on your company's growth. Not your team's capability, not the market, not your strategy, the system. Over the last few weeks on this show, we've talked about why delegation fails without authority transfer, the 4 behaviors that train a company to wait. We've talked about what your meeting volume is actually telling you about your structure. So today we'll install the fix, not the concept, not the diagnosis, the tool. And I call this tool the decision filter. If you implement what I walk you through today, you'll have a framework that will immediately start reducing the volume of decisions that reach you, starting this week. But before I give you the tool, I need to make sure that we're clear on the actual problem, because most founders misdiagnose it. The typical founder diagnosis goes like this. My team brings me too many decisions. So my team must need to get better at making decisions, or I need to coach them or train them or find stronger people. That diagnosis is wrong. Not because your team couldn't improve, maybe they could, but because the problem isn't their decision-making ability. The problem is that your company has no defined system for sorting which decisions belong where. So I want you to think about it this way. In your company right now, how does the decision get made? For most founder-led companies, someone encounters a situation that requires a decision. They assess whether they feel comfortable making that decision alone or not. If they do, they make the decision. If they don't, they bring it back to the founder. That's not a decision system. That's a confidence test. And confidence is not a reliable sorting mechanism because confidence varies by person, by day, by how the last conversation went, by how the founder was feeling that morning. Are they happy? Are they not happy? A confidence-based escalation system means that on a good week, when everyone feels empowered and aligned, fewer decisions reach you. And on a hard week, when a project stalled or a client pushed back or the team is uncertain, everything routes back to you. The volume of decisions reaching you is not a fixed structural problem. It fluctuates, which makes it feel like a people problem instead of a systems problem. But let's be clear, it's a systems problem, and it has a systems solution. That solution is a decision filter, a clear, written, role-specific system that tells every person in your company in advance, without ambiguity, which decisions belong to them, which ones require input, and which ones require escalation. Not a confidence test, a structural rule. The decision filter works because it sorts every decision in your company into one of 3 categories. And they're not complicated. They're designed to be simple enough that every leader in your company can apply them without a conversation. So category 1, decide and move. These are decisions the role owner makes fully and independently. No input needed, no approval needed, no notification needed. They decide, they move, they document if relevant. For a marketing leader, this might include campaign creation direction, content calendar, copy and messaging adjustments, vendor selection under a defined spend threshold. For an operations leader, it might look like this: process improvements within their function, team scheduling, internal tool decisions under a defined threshold, workflow adjustments that don't affect other departments. The critical word here is fully. Not mostly owns it, but runs it by the founder anyway. Fully owns it. The decision belongs to that role. The outcome belongs to that role. The accountability belongs to that role. When a decision lives in category 1, it never reaches the founder's desk. Not because the founder isn't interested, but because the structure has defined it as outside the founder's decision scope. So category 2, decide with input. These are decisions the role owner makes, but after gathering input from specific people. The key word is still the role owner makes the decision. They gather input they need. They make the call. They move. This category exists because some decisions genuinely benefit from cross-functional perspective. A marketing decision that affects the sales pipeline, an operation decision that affects team capacity, a product decision that affects positioning. Input improves the decision, but input is not the same as approval. Category 2 decisions require the role owner to do one thing before they decide. Have a specific conversation with a specific person. Not a meeting, not a presentation, a conversation. I'm making this call. Here's my direction. Do you see anything I'm missing? Then they decide. This distinction matters enormously because most companies have accidentally collapsed category 2 into a permission structure. What should be gather input, then decide becomes present to the founder, wait for the signal, then move. That collapse is where the permission meeting comes from. The collapse is what decision filter corrects. So category 3, escalate. There are decisions that genuinely belong to the founder or to a cross-functional leadership group. Decisions that affect the company's strategic direction. Decisions that exceed defined financial thresholds. Decisions that create commitments the company cannot easily reverse. Decisions that affect multiple departments simultaneously in ways that require coordination at the top. Category 3 is not a catch-all. It's not anything I'm not sure about. It's a specific defined list of decision types that require founder involvement by design, not by default. So here's what most founders discover when they actually write out the category 3 list. It's much shorter than they expected. The decisions that genuinely require the founder's involvement are a fraction of what currently reaches them. The rest, the vast majority, belongs in category 1 or 2. It's been routing to the founder not because it required the founder, because no one ever defined where else it should go. So I want to tell you about a moment I first built this for my own company, because it didn't start with a clean framework. It started with a problem I couldn't ignore anymore. I was tracking the decisions that reached me in a single week. I started with the decision ownership audit that I talked about 2 episodes ago. And by Wednesday, I had 17 items on my list. 17 decisions that had touched me in 2.5 days. I went through each one and I asked the honest question, should this have reached me? 11 of the 17, 11 should never have come to me. Not because they were unimportant, but because they belonged to someone else in the organization. They'd reached me because we had no defined system for keeping them away from me. I sat with that number for a while. 11 decisions in a 2.5 day period that I had taken on. I'd answered, considered, weighed in on, that were never mine to carry. And I thought about what the number looks like week, over a month, over a year. The cognitive load alone, not just the time, the mental space those decisions occupied, the context switching, the interruption of strategic thinking every single time something landed in my inbox that I needed to answer. So I built the filter. Not perfectly, not all at once. I started with one role, my operations leader. I wrote down every category of decision her role touched. And for each category, I answered one question. Does this require me or does it require her? It was 3 hours of work. The document fit on 2 pages. And within 10 days, the decisions coming from that role dropped by more than half. Not because she changed, because the system finally told her what was hers. So here's exactly how to build your decision filter, not conceptually, step by step, starting today. So step 1, pick one role. Do not try to build this for your entire company at once. Pick the role that generates the highest volume of decisions reaching you. That's your starting point. One role, one leader, one filter. You can expand it later, but starting with one role means you have something installed and working within a week, not a project that lives on your to-do list over the next month. Step 2, list every decision category that role touches. Not every individual decision, categories. A marketing leader's categories might look like campaign strategy, content and copy, vendor relationships, budget allocation, reporting and analytics, team priorities. 6 categories. Write them down. Step 3, assign every category to one of 3 buckets. For each category, decide once. Either decide and move, or decide with input, or escalate. Be specific about thresholds where they matter. Decide and move on vendor selection under $5,000. Decide with input on vendor selection between $5,000 and $20,000. Escalate above $20,000. Write it down. This step is where most founders get uncomfortable because assigning something to category 1, decide and move, means genuinely releasing it. Not releasing it and then asking about it every check-in. Not releasing it and re-entering when the outcomes make you nervous. Completely releasing it. So if you find yourself wanting to put everything in category 2 or category 3, that's the pattern to notice. That's the approval re-entry behavior showing up in the installation process. Name it, set it aside, and ask the honest question. Does this actually require me? Or am I just uncomfortable letting it go? Those are different answers, and they lead to different structures. Step 4, share it with the role owner in one single conversation. Not a presentation, not a meeting, a conversation. Here's what I've mapped out for your decision authority. Here's what's fully yours. Here's why I want your input before we move. Here's what still comes to me. Does this reflect how you understood your role? Then listen. They will tell you where the gaps are. They will tell you where they've been uncertain. They will tell you what they've been escalating that they wish they could own. That conversation will sharpen the filter before it goes live. Step number 5, run it for 2 weeks, then review. Don't get bogged down in a paralysis over this. Just experiment. Run it for 2 weeks, then review it. The filter is not permanent on day 1. It's a working document. After 2 weeks, look at what's still reaching you from that role. If something is still routing to you that you assigned to category 1, find out why. If the rule is unclear, did the leader not feel confident with the authority? Or did you re-enter when you said you wouldn't? All 3 of those are different corrections, but none of them require scrapping the filter. They require refining it. Here's what changes when this is installed and working. The leader stops designing their work around your approval. They start moving. Your calendar opens up, not because you canceled meetings, but because the conversations that were filling it no longer need to happen. And your strategic thinking time starts to actually exist. not because you worked harder, but because structure finally started working for you. Thanks for listening to Burn On, Not Out. If decisions are still flowing back to you, don't just take notes. Install structure. Watch the CEO Decision Reset to see exactly how the founder bottleneck forms structurally and what gets installed to remove it. The link is in the show notes. Until next week, structure before strategy.